I put 100 players into this winter-themed map to see if they can build civilizations. However, this will not be so easy, since deep below this winter wonderland, a dark secret brews. Will the Legion be able to beat this evil in time, or will the cult reign supreme in their secret plans? One more thing, these players are set to hardcore mode, so if they die, they're gone forever. Get ready as I present to you the ultimate winter civilization experiment. Let's start with the Legion. Their goal was quite simple really, defeat any trace of their evil opposition, the cult. The Legion base was also the first location with a massive struggle.
Legion!
No!
Why is it like 6 people?
There was a limited supply of powerful care packages scattered around, and not everyone was able to get their fair share of resources and food. On top of this, civilian houses were being raided so quickly that some players didn't even stand a chance. After all this chaos, the Legionnaires' main base of operations was chosen to be Castle Polaris, and they got straight to work on building up their empire. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, cult players were sticking close to their own castle, simply named after their cult's ancient god, Old Harna, but with much different intentions than the Legion. Their only goal was to follow in the footsteps of Old Harna and spread her influence as much as they could.
But can we kill people who are useless? Because they are like providing nothing right now.
Most of their players began preparing by collecting resources to build altars in the hopes of powering up Old Harna, while a smaller group of their warriors went out into the world to keep tabs on the Legion. There were also rumors going around that an ancient cult group were hidden away deep underground and working their magic in allegiance with Old Harna, but no one really knew if these were really myths or reality. One of their most powerful warriors, Mr. Mello, even stumbled upon a large tower with his crew at the bottom of a mountain leading up to Castle Old Harna, and began immediately looting it to gain a head start over the Legion.
We're gonna go find some more loot in the chest and some food, okay?
Alright.
Little did they know that something devastating was on the horizon that would create massive problems for their plans. Meanwhile, back on Legion territory, there was a clear divide in the power level of players, as some were fully geared with enchanted armor and weapons, whilst others had little to no protection. This lack of direction and teamwork was worrying to a lot of the members, as they knew that unity would be the only way to achieve their goals.
Why are you starving to death? Do you need food?
And thus everyone decided to call an election for a leader. Most Legion players gathered in Castle Polaris, and a few candidates gave their proposal as to why they should be picked for leadership. But two players stood out far above the rest, TTV Future and Asian Doge.
Alright, those two should be leader.
Yeah, like Future.
This duo was picked to be the joint leaders of the Legion after almost all members voted for them in the election, leading to a new sense of direction for the entire team. At the same time, the cult was also hosting a leadership election in Old Harna's castle, as they knew it would boost their efficiency dramatically. Just like the Legion, a few members stepped up to the plate, including Mr. Mello himself, but no one could seem to top the cult loyalty of Zelge. For this reason, he was immediately selected to rule his team with unrivaled loyalty to the cult gods, and his group got straight to work on recruiting new members scattered around the world, and of course bringing back much needed loot.
We must take down the Legion and summon our god.
Suddenly though, a blizzard blitzed across the map, and players were now fighting for their life. Both groups were thrown into complete chaos as members had to drop everything they were doing and urgently find cover before they were frozen to death. Mr. Mello's cultist squad was particularly hit hard as they were caught directly in the middle of the map and quite far from their base, which led to the onset of mass hysteria.
Back to the tower, back to the tower,
Blizzard.
back to the tower,
I got, yeah, back to the car. Yeah, go. Everyone go. Make sure you have food on you. Go.
They decided to try and sprint back to the cult tower as it was their nearest structure, but not everyone made it in alive. Mello himself succumbed to the elements and his crew were lost for words as they no longer had the glue that held them together and had to move ahead alone.
Alright, we're back in the tower. Make sure, everyone make sure. No! Wait, did he actually?
The death of Mello hit the rest of the team hard, and players across the map were being wiped out left and right by this disaster, while others were hiding deep underground or under heavily fortified structures. Just as all hope seemed lost, the blizzard began to slowly peter out, and players finally had a glimmer of hope.
We will make a decree and try and come up with a peace treaty with the cultists.
The impacts of this crisis were not quite over yet though, as many players were on low health and still just hanging on by a thread, meaning they had to take a stealthy approach until they regrouped. To put additional pressure on these players, both teams sent out search squads to find and kill anyone who opposed their fundamental goals, as both Zelge and the Legion leaders saw the value in thinning enemy ranks. The remaining players began to wonder if such a harsh disaster could truly be natural, or whether some horrific force was behind it all.
After the blizzard, do you guys want to go to
Yeah.
the houses over there?
Yeah. We should definitely do that.
The only places that were truly safe amongst all this mayhem were the team's bases, which were already starting to see overcrowding, leading to food shortages that could destroy groups from the inside. At this point, people were dying left and right, and weapons lay on the floor of the snowy tundra, speaking volumes to the brutality of the battling powers in this land. After careful consideration and a lot of back and forth between Zelge and his lieutenants, he decided to propose a ceasefire to the Legion, as he saw that his forces were dwindling much quicker than even he had anticipated. And after a while, both Future and Doge agreed. Both Legion leaders were very skeptical about this ceasefire, however, as they knew that the cult was still saving something sinister for later.
The Lord says we must gear up and strive to be the best.
This first war wasn't all bad for the Legion, however, as they managed to pick up some new members who defected from the cult side due to the team's barbaric nature, which greatly benefited them with information about their enemies. Small Legionnaire groups like the one headed by El Deathly emerged, roaming the lands looking to bring back loot to base, as they knew their team needed to get ahead of the cult.
Hey, we saw this. Let's go back to the original. Follow me.
After a lot of exploration with little to no results, the group eventually discovered what seemed to be an abandoned village with numerous large structures and some decent gear inside. What they would find next though would completely change everything. Back over at the cultist base, spirits were high, and the entire team was showing their faith to their leader Zelge. Unexpectedly though, a few Legion members showed up at Castle Ordana's doorstep led by Whalefinns, and were met with fierce welcomes by Zelge and his men. First they claimed that they weren't with the Legion, and then they claimed that they had even created their own team called the Kringle Crew, to which Zelge asked them what they came all this way for.
We are the Legion, we're just sent through.
Oh, you're not the Legion.
Zelge scoffed at them, but before he could even get a word out, Whalefinns chucked a snowball right at his face. The grounds erupted in laughter with snowballs flying everywhere. Over in the Winter Village, things were heating up as El Deathly's Legion squad came across a weird looking signpost with mysterious markings on it saying those without eyes may not see. Initially the group was creeped out as they thought this village was innocent from their earlier exploration, but they soon went beneath the surface and opened the trap door with a fear of the unknown. After finally getting to the bottom of this eerie tunnel, the squad found themselves in what seemed to be a massive cultist ruins lost to the ages. They now found themselves in the belly of the beast.
The day of ascension draws near. Let the world know the name of its god. The Lord has been dead too long.
As the frightened legionnaires progressed through these winding catacombs, they eventually emerged into a gigantic room with cult banners strewn across the walls and monsters everywhere. And they knew that they were getting closer to the truths the cult concealed. Suddenly, the skies turned red, and players traversing the overworld began to get worried as to what exactly was going on. The moon had a particularly otherworldly glow to it, and it was obvious that the Blood Moon had arrived. Warriors from both teams knew that this could be the end of them if they didn't find cover immediately. You see, Blood Moons curse these lands once every few years and increase mob spawns drastically, whilst also raining down lightning on players, containing even more monsters. Deep underground, everything was made clear though, as a secret cult group was celebrating this disaster, stating that Oldhana herself was finally getting stronger.
Oldhana, our mother in hell. She wills us to grow stronger.
Legion loyalists were also hiding for their life underground, too scared to go back outside after seeing some of their fellow brothers killed by horrific beasts. Even Castle Polaris had been blocked off at this point, with its remaining inhabitants praying that one of the squads they sent out earlier would find out what was causing these terrible events. Luckily for them, El Deathly, Swerving, and the rest of their crew were now deep in the heart of the cultist dungeon and finding valuable loot left and right, although what they were really looking for was answers.
Fellas, something tells me as soon as we get down there, there's gonna be a little something.
Their members were falling like flies, and just as all hope seemed to be lost, the Blood Moon finally ended. Everyone let out a huge sigh of relief as they had at long last braved the storm and slowly made their way back to the base with a glimmer of hope in this bleak world. Furthermore, the cult group from earlier were also trying to capitalize on the signs of Oldhana's return by practicing some special rituals.
It is time. Do you know what must be done?
They hoped that these rituals would increase their queen's influence over the world and eventually allow her to destroy every living being. And it was even said in ancient literature that these rituals would inevitably bring about the end of days. One of the cultists Matt once lived even started getting weird visions of an altar rising out of the ground and assumed this would summon Oldhana. At the same time, Zelj wanted to propose peace to the Legion in the hopes that he could focus on rebuilding his army and allow his civilization to prosper. Subsequently sending out a few messengers to the Legion base calling for his momentary peace treaty to be signed.
Go in pairs, go in pairs.
No.
I shall travel with unliving.
Go past.
After some time had passed, Zelj's messengers had traveled far and wide in search of Future and the Legion army, but caught them coming back to their base in bad condition. Due to the Legion's difficult situation, they had no other option than to accept the cult's peace treaty for the meantime and go straight to work on recruiting more members. Their empire was a mere fraction of its original size, and the cult was leagues ahead of them in almost all respects. They knew that if they wanted to stand even a sliver of a chance against the cult at this point, they would need a miracle. But what they didn't know was just how quick that miracle was heading their way. Day 2 immediately began with a bang, and a massive altar had risen out of the ground in the middle of the map. This was clearly the secret cult's doing, and it was now obvious that their special rituals had worked, although players on the server had no clue what was going on.
Swerving, we're doing an ambush. Swerving,
Does
we're
anyone
doing
have
an
any
ambush.
food?
Get ready.
No, I was smacking randoms.
A change in the world was however felt by all players, and the altar's crystal started to glow an icy blue, showing that something big was about to happen. Moreover, the hidden cultist group started to hear Oldhana asking what it was they desired most, to which they responded with bloodshed. Oldhana then proceeded to tell them that soon there would be a lot more bloodshed than they could ever imagine. Scouts from both the Legion and cultist armies had also seen the large altar and told their leaders that they needed to investigate it ASAP. Soon the teams arrived at the altar and crowded around it without knowing what exactly would happen next. One by one, players were being revived and members of both teams rejoiced as they were given a second chance to see their fallen companions. All the while, the secret cult watched on and knew that more bloodshed was on the horizon. The altar breathed new life into the world, but somewhere in the back of their minds, the cult was questioning why Oldhana had seemingly done the opposite of create more carnage.
It's lit.
Call me Lich, not Lick. Still, Oldhana could sense their doubt and assured them that all would be revealed in due time. Eventually though, all players packed it up and returned to their bases with only a few casualties in between. But as Zelj and the Legion leaders arrived back at their thrones, they wondered if everything seemed too good to be true. The world was now completely different, and both the Legion and cult were given a chance to enact their plans with much larger armies. Both teams called immediate meetings in their castle throne rooms. The Legion specifically had a sense of urgency like no other.
We need to get ready, guys.
Let's
start the mines. Let's start the mines.
They realized that without this recent miracle, they would have been absolutely demolished by the cult, and reflected upon their poor decisions and how to fix them. The group decided to implement a new leadership structure straight away, with only Future as king, as they believed that two leaders at once made things too complicated. After this, players like Rufa and Fur Raven went back out into the world under Future's guidance to bring back as much loot as possible, to help defend them against any potential attacks.
I haven't killed anyone for no reason this time. They all hit me first.
Over in the Legion base, players were steadily upgrading their gear, and squads were beginning to bring all sorts of useful treasures back to their team. Deathly's group was one of the first to return to the base, and they had a lot of powerful loot to share. But as soon as they arrived at the front gate, they noticed a seriously bad sign.
Stay away. Wait, I know.
After seeing just how many cultists there were, they decided to make a run for it inside Castle Polaris. But as the cultists flooded inside, they soon realized that the rest of their team was nowhere to be found. They narrowly escaped. As the horde was fast approaching, they decided that they couldn't live with themselves leaving their base in such a state, and knew that the rest of their team was relying on them heavily. They knew that if they failed this task, their whole base would be lost to the cult. The Legionnaires were initially met with fierce resistance, but managed to outsmart the cultists with swift tactics, leading to their inevitable retaking of the base.
We won, Melvin! We're
We're better.
Let's go. Easy.
After everything was said and done, the whole crew were very weak and decided that the best course of action would be to regroup and prepare to storm Castle Aldhana one final time. Speaking of Castle Aldhana, only Zelj and a few of his most loyal men remained there, as corruption was spreading all throughout it at rapid pace. The snow was once again blood red and tentacles rose out of the mountains it lay on, showing that Aldhana's influence was becoming even stronger. Despite this, Zelj decided to assume a defensive position while his guards patrolled the castle halls, as he knew that if his team lost their base, it would mark the beginning of the end. Unexpectedly, Eldeathly and his entire squad of legionnaires came bursting through the castle's front door, and this time they weren't going to let the cult get away with their evil deeds.
Guys, go to the throne room. Go to the throne room.
They scoured floor to floor in search of Zelj with every intent of ending his life, and were killing cultists like it was nothing. But once they reached the top floor of the castle, things changed drastically. Zelj decided to keep his best men on standby within the castle in case of emergency, and the Legion's kill squad was met with NFT-13, Rakag, and Death Chain at the top of the final flight of stairs.
Oh, Dudley, where are you? Oh, Dudley, where are you?
I'm top fighting all of them, bro.
Calm down. What about
This isn't a fight, this is a slaughter.
Eldeathly was swiftly dealt with, which scared the rest of his accomplices enough to vacate the castle and head back to base. Although another blizzard that could easily wipe them out was now raging. After this, the surviving cult members regrouped on Zelj's command and got back to work on rebuilding their nation and preparing for all outcomes. As Aldhana's presence around the map had spread faster than even the secret cult had initially envisioned, there was only one thing that remained in the way of her return, and that was enough blood to fuel the altar to maximum capacity. All they needed was a sacrifice to end this entire event, and thus they sent a few of their own out and into the wide world to achieve this goal.
Step loose.
We're innocent, dude. We're not gonna fight you.
Back over at the Legion base, all Legionnaires were cooped up inside Castle Polaris and patiently awaiting a speech from their king. The rest of Eldeathly's group had come back by this time as well and told Future what the cult had done and how they wanted to destroy the remainder of the Legion for good. Future was put in the hot seat at this point as his nation was already struggling in many aspects, but decided that the best course of action moving forward would be to work on their food shortage issue first and then take the fight directly to the cult.
We've had a food proposition where we have no food left and everybody is starving.
He forced his team to share all their food as equally as possible, as they didn't have enough time to wait for crops to grow, and made sure that everyone was prepared to die for their noble cause. Moreover, both Future and Zelj received word from their men that the abandoned village in the center of the map had changed massively, and they needed to check it out urgently. Zelj already knew that this was his Queen Aldhana, and immediately sent out every single team member he had to the village. Future, on the other hand, was obviously skeptical, but realized he and his team were running out of options, and knew that he had to send every troop he had into that same village if he wanted to stop the cult. Both teams rushed towards the village with nothing but the goals that drove them in their minds, but started noticing that all sorts of things were out of place on their way. It was clear that someone or something was watching them. Shortly after, both teams met each other directly in the village, but there was now a massive crater in its core, fully exposing the cultist dungeon from earlier. Lightning struck down from the sky as a giant pentagram lit up with flames could be seen at the bottom of the hole, and the leaders of both nations were shocked to see a hooded figure slowly walking towards them. The mysterious individual revealed himself to be none other than Matt Once Live, and presented the two teams with a proposal. They could either keep fighting amongst each other and inevitably die out, or
You could either keep fighting amongst each other and die out, or you can present a sacrifice and reach unimaginable levels of power.
it was now decision time for Zelj and Future, as the fate of the world hung in their balance. They could either let the rest of their team commit to the sacrifice proposal, or await the eternal fury of war. They both went back and forth for a while, but Zelj knew that this was what he had been waiting his entire life for, and concluded that he would be the one to make the sacrifice. He plunged his entire team into the darkness below, told them to light the torches around the pentagram, and look forward to eternal glory in the afterlife.
I have a feeling okay.
Yeah, I have a pretty good bad feeling about this.
Their souls were quickly taken, and the world began shifting as corruption spread to every single inch of the landscape. The trees rot and the snow turned blood red as fire and brimstone torched any leftover structures, showing just what a hellscape Zelj's cult had brought about. There was also now a blazing portal at the bottom of the pit that all remaining players could sense an evil presence like no other coming from. A large tombstone lay above the pit with a sign by its side stating our Lord demands a sacrifice of man's word. And now the players knew that this was a puzzle they needed to solve. Zelge was the first one up to the plate and managed to piece together that man's word sounded a lot like a description of a book and noticed a lectern sitting beneath the tombstone. He placed the book he found from a nearby chest in the lectern, and suddenly an end crystal appeared in the sky. As he could see no other alternative, he drew his bow and prepared to shoot the end crystal, but just as he was about to fire,
Oh, we welcome you, Lord. So I am your Lord.
the cult was now completely lost to time, and all that remained was a dozen or so Legion soldiers, including Future himself, and even they were trapped in a corrupted world with no clue of how to escape. One of the Legion soldiers, Shadowdark, quickly picked up Zelge's bow and shot the end crystal before more monsters could arrive to take them out, and a loud roar pierced through the sky. Something had awakened. The terrified Legion warriors peeked down into the hole and saw a giant monster rise out of the portal coated in a jet black aura, and immediately knew that this was Oldhana herself. At first they lit her up with arrows, but soon realized that they were having no effect and started panicking, not knowing whether they could meet their end here and now. The bravest of their ranks started descending into the pit, knowing that it would be better to die a hero's death rather than give up like cowards. Future shouted at all his men to follow them and aim for the creature's tentacles, as it would be their only hope. Eventually, a few men managed to take down enough tentacles for Oldhana to flinch in pain, and the black aura that surrounded it faded away, revealing its true appearance as a truly horrifying demon.
Oh my god! Wait, don't attack, stand by.
The god instantly unleashed its full wrath on the Legionnaires and started teleporting directly to them while simultaneously slashing them with its sharp claws. There were also a huge number of monsters, meaning that the fight was even harder, and Oldhana began showing her full potential with even more attacks. Just as the players were starting to deal a significant amount of damage to the beast, Oldhana started to heal herself by absorbing the soul essence of players, and it was looking like all their efforts were for naught, as they kept losing people. Soon the Legion was left with only 10 members and had only gotten Oldhana's health bar halfway down, showing that this fight could go either way. Oldhana was getting desperate at this point though, and after trading blows with as many Legionnaires as she could, she decided there would be no better time than now to release her full potential and bring about the end of days once and for all. She therefore turned the sky red with her fury and brought about the ultimate blood moon after gathering all her strength for one big final assault on the Legion. At this point, there was simply no other option than to keep fighting.
Why the blue moon?
The Legion's men urgently started putting all their focus and pressure back onto Oldhana, under the hope that killing her would also end the blood moon. But a lot of their warriors ended up being quickly killed by cultists, leading them to only have 5 players left by the time Oldhana was getting weaker. Things were looking seriously bleak for the Legion, and the players knew that they would die out if they stayed in the confined space of the dungeon with this many monsters chasing them down, and hatched one last plan for survival. Steelman and Agent Apple ascended the ruined stairs back up to the overworld and attempted to lure Oldhana into a bigger arena so that they could more easily avoid her minions and fight her head on.
Okay, take it. Hurry up, everyone to the surface.
Come on.
Okay, stop sucking.
Surprisingly, this plan worked, and Oldhana teleported straight up to try and finish them off, but the few Legion members that remained knew that this could be their final chance to kill her before she regenerated once again. Her health was low at this point, and a lot of the monsters she summoned in the Blood Moon were stuck in the depths of the dungeon, unable to help her. Baguette Guy, Dirtle, and a few of the other last survivors charged straight at Oldhana with their swords drawn and led a massive assault, chunking away her health extremely quickly.
Oh no.
Cornered and in a fit of desperation, Oldhana unleashed her swarm of tentacles to push the Legion away, but was finally slain by the combined pressure of all the Legionnaires.
Yes. Yes.
Everyone was bruised and badly beaten by this point with severely low health, but they had finally managed to best the cult's evil and achieve the impossible in beating a god. However, they did not forget about all the fallen soldiers that helped them get this far, like El Deathly, who were prematurely taken from this world and decided to honor the dead by raising their swords to the sky and saluting.
You're never gonna kill us. You hear me? You're never gonna kill us, Lich.
Yeah, like, you'll never kill us.
After a bit of exploring the outer bounds of the corrupted landscape, the group finally came across an abandoned helicopter and all got inside just in the nick of time, as the remainder of Aldhana's monsters clawed at its windows. Without a moment more to spare, Dirtle piloted the helicopter off the island and crossed the sea, escaping all the horrors they had faced.